Inside the Birds is back. What's up, everybody? It's Inside the Birds. It's Geoff Mosher. It's Adam Caplan. And of course, Inside the Birds is presented to you by our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. It's the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. Adam, the Eagles, they're out of the resort. They're back into the NovaCare complex. We used to call it the compound. Right, because there's nothing but work getting done. The Eagles are back at work. We'll get into that. Before we start, though, I always like to kind of start off with something that grabs me a little bit from either the press conferences or practice or what have you. And it really struck me as interesting in Nick Sirianni's press conference with Howie Roseman that they do on the first day of camp, that he was asked, as you would imagine, about why is it that teams that are built to be good enough to get to a Super Bowl seem to struggle the next year, whether it's the hangover or just the overall difficulty to get back, even if they keep a lot of parts intact. And Nick Sirianni, we don't commonly associate Nick Sirianni with Mr. Analytics the way we do with Howie and Alec Hallaby, right? But he went into in-depth about a study on reasons why he thinks this has happened, and obviously injuries are a big part of it. He allowed that, but his mantra, his whole credo was we're not the defending NFC champions, we're not the losers of the Super Bowl, we're the same as 31 other teams this year, and that it's about the first game right now against the Patriots and not about anything else.
Yeah, so you hear Bill Belichick do that, even if they win a Super Bowl. You're starting at 0-0. You're completely starting over. Their installs all for week one against the Patriots. That's how every team does it. Right. They prepare for the first game. So yeah, you're starting at 0-0. Everyone's got a chance. Fans around the National Football League know this. Even as bad as the Texans should be and the Titans and some other teams, they're 0-0. Sure. So you do start over, and that, he's big on winning the day, and it's kind of corny, and his predecessor Doug Peterson would talk about that. We've heard coaches talk about that. Chip Kelly would talk about it, winning the day, and that's fine. But look, when he's had tremendous success, man, this has been pretty unexpected to do as well as they've done under this guy who seemingly came out of nowhere. Guy that a lot of coaches knew around the National Football League, but the Eagles done this now. 3 out of the last 4 head coaches never had another coaching interview. Andy Reid only interviewed with the Packers. Doug Peterson only interviewed with the Eagles, and this guy only interviewed with the Eagles.
Wow,
Andy Reid only interviewed with the Eagles.
Right.
So 3 out of the 4. It's crazy.
That really is a fascinating. That's not a stat. That's just a moment of historical evidence that's really fascinating about. It really tells a lot about Jeffrey Lurie and his process of selecting head coaches and not being afraid to go against the grain or to look for something that everybody isn't looking at. Were you surprised at all about Nick talking about doing a study on why teams have trouble getting back to the Super Bowl after going the year before?
No, because I know teams do this. It's, you mentioned the injuries. I'll tell you, I talked to some of the players after 17 and in the locker room. It may have been late season. They were going through some injury issues, but some of the players thought there were some entitlement guys. It got to their head a little bit. Some guys on the record said they thought they were a little bit better than they really were. And I think that's part of it. You just think, I remember Dan Marino saying this. Dan Marino got the Super Bowl. First or second year, and he thought he'd be back there again, right? And he never was.
No, never was.
Don't take it for granted, man. You never know.
Yeah, that's interesting. He was asked, Nick was, to share some of the results of the study, and obviously he wasn't going to, bite on that. He mentioned injuries, which everybody already knows. He did say also offensive decline. I'd have to go back and look at some of the teams that lost the Super Bowl. I know that the Bengals, after losing the Super Bowl, struggled last year. They certainly had the hangover, but their offense did decline, but it shouldn't have, because they brought the quarterback back, they brought Higgins back, they brought Jamar Chase back, they added guys to their offensive line they thought were going to help. But you remember the first 6 or 7 weeks, their offensive line continued to be in disarray, even with also Joe Mixon back. So it just took them a while to seem to get back into it. But once they did, they were there at the end.
Well, Chase got hurt. Yeah, Chase hurt his hip. He was gone
about that.
That was a major issue. That completely set them back. In fact, it was really hard to watch their offense without Chase, because Higgins is a great 2. and Boyd's a really good slot. The tall slot is one of the best slots in the league, but not having that X receiver, it's a real problem for them. That's why Hayden Hurst his numbers started going up. He became more of a factor. And by the way, he's no longer there. Irv Smith Jr., you might remember his dad, Irv Smith, also a tight end in the National Football League many years ago. But getting back to the Eagles here, yeah, look, it's interesting. You got to look at that stuff. You know, we by the way, we'll get into kind of what we're some of the things we're going to talk about today. But we were able to talk about Joe Banner about this kind of now. Their Eagles situation is different. We talked to Joe earlier this week for our Patreon members. That interview, I think, will go up next week. You know, Joe made a point like, look, people see the Eagles had a great offseason. Well, they lost 7 starters. And that's on tied to Sirianni. That's another thing. If you lose a lot of starters, unless the guys who are replacing them are just as good, if not better, how can you say the team is going to be as good?
I agree with you, especially when so many of those starters are on one side of the ball with the defense, where you basically are rebuilding the center, the underbelly of your defense from DT to linebacker to safety. You mentioned Joe Banner. We had a great discussion for our Patreon members with Chuck Pagano, who was the Bears defensive coordinator from 2019 to 2020. And without giving away the details, obviously, he was an outsider coming in to become the defensive coordinator of the Bears. Sean Desai was already there. And we made the point that a lot of coaches come in and bring their own people when they come from the outside. Well, he kept Sean Desai, and he kept him for a reason. And he went into great detail into what he learned about Sean Desai pretty early, why he kept him on his staff, and what he expects from Sean Desai this year, given the personnel that he's got. We had a really long discussion about it. I encourage you to check it out. Obviously, to become a member, it's patreon.com/InsideTheBirds. But I just want to publicly thank again Chuck Pagano for giving us his time and his insight, because he was very passionate about the subject. I mean, he didn't just treat this like I'm just going to give these guys 15 minutes of pleasantries about Sean Desai. He was really good about it.
Yeah, so he and I were texting, and I remember he said it would be an honor to come on your show, and I was kind of like, he must say this to everybody. Well, he doesn't really this. To be honest with you, this is our number one goal over the last 3 months, to get him on the show.
Yeah,
because he Desai coached for him for 2 years. Because we had John DeFilippo on, and he's known Sean for like around 20 years. They were young postgraduate coaches at Boston College when John's dad was the athletic director at BC. And so we got the best part about that interview, other than his intel on Desai, was to break down the Fangio defense from an offensive standpoint. And John had such great detail about what it's like, and it's how not fun it is to try to score against that defense, and the coverages. So that was great. But the big one, we want to get Pagano, and you only be able to hear it. And you know it. He broke down exactly what the coverage are going to be. It's some of it's what we heard, some of we're not aware of. Mm-hmm. And the only way you get it is if you become a Patreon member. And we appreciate the latest. He'll get a lot of people joining. We love it. We saw Brandon in the live stream. Brandon signed up.
Yep.
Meek signed up. Brandon was, it's funny because Brandon was it his lazy boy?
I don't know, but because people have asked me about it since our last podcast. I was jealous of him because I can't sit on a couch like that right now with my ribs being what they are. And I haven't really improved since our last pod. So I'm going to go ahead and get the X-ray and see how things are going to progress from there. But yeah. We want to thank Brandon and Malik, our newest members, and welcome everybody else who's jumping aboard. And we got a lot of stuff to get into. We're obviously going to get into, the right guard situation, the running back situation, other things that listen, we're recording this podcast with just one practice, but there were still some developments that look forward to talking about.
Sure.
Before we do that, we'll talk about a few transactions that have taken place over the last few days. One of the sort of under the radar ones, but important in the grand scheme of competition, is Devin Allen, the wide receiver, starting camp on the active /NFI, which means non-football injury list, which is different than starting camp on the PUP, physically unable to perform list, even though both of them would keep you out of practice. So go ahead and explain the difference, Rare.
It means exactly the same thing, but the reason why there's a different designation is because he got hurt outside the facility.
Right.
you go on NFI, non-football injury, or non-football illness, if you have an illness outside, like, if you unfortunately get a disease, or you have something that needs to be treated that's not an injury, that would be non-football illness. Unfortunately, Marquise Goodwin had blood clots. We wish him very well. He went on, I believe, NFI, and he's with the Browns, by the way. Never played for the Eagles, was traded to the Eagles, and reverted back to them.
He and Frank Gore on the all Eagles team.
That's another story for we never got to our off-season show when we talk about funny stories and reporting all the nonsense that goes on, but that's another one. But yeah, former Eagle legend Frank Gore. But getting back to Devin Allen, so yeah, it's unfortunate. So he hurt his calf, during his track situation the spring, and we were told that the big thing for him is they really wanted him to develop as a receiver, push for a role somehow. It's hard to keep a guy just as a specialist now, unless you're a kicker or punter, obviously. So, and he right now, he was a long shot to begin with to make it. This sets him back. Calf injuries can linger. We don't know the degree of strain that he has, but that's not good. So yeah, you're right. This sets him back, and now he, by the way, and this is the other thing that stinks, is he counts against the roster. Now, if he stays on NFI for the regular season, he does not count on the roster. So he counts the 90-man right now.
He was already in a tough predicament with camp because he was trying to compete here for a roster spot with the Eagles. And I know at one point this summer he was doing well. He won, I believe, at the Penn Relays, and he was competing in his hurdles, which he had a couple of his best personal times this year, and he was thinking about trying to compete for a world championship. And the world championship does run, I believe, concurrently with parts of training camp. So I don't know what this latest injury is going to do for either.
Not good.
Either way, but obviously it's not great for him. And we'll just have to see how quickly. Calves are interesting. They can be quicker than you think. They can linger for quite a while. And I would think for an Olympic hurdler / kickoff returner / wide receiver, you're going to want to make sure that thing is 100% before you're back on the field.
Yeah. By the way, high re-injury rate for calf injuries. I know we've covered that thing for 20 years. These calf strains are not good. So they placed him on NFI. They waived Dalton Keene. Matt Leo, we hardly knew ye. What was this? Was 2017 his first year or 2020? I can't remember.
What year is this? So this is
23,
22, 20. I think 20. Did you say 2017?
Yeah,
no, it wasn't that early.
I know, but I couldn't see. I could not remember. Was it?
You get 2 years of exemption, right? International exemption.
Yeah.
So I think it was 2019 and 2020. No, 2020 and 2021.
I thought it was 2020 was his first year.
2020 and 2021, he was an exempt player. And then last year, 2022, he didn't make the team, but was on the practice squad, I believe.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but yes, he's retired. And as you mentioned, Dalton Keene gets waived. Now, they did bring back, as we mentioned last podcast, wide receiver Deon Cain. And of course, they signed offensive tackle Dennis Kelly. So some familiar faces there.
Yeah, he's back. 7-year absence.
I was surprised by the I am, but I'm not. I'm not surprised because he had a heck of a camp for the Eagles last year. So he still has upside. He went to the USFL, right?
Yes.
And
Deon Cain. Yeah,
sure. He did well there. But the Eagles have so many wide receivers in camp.
Yeah, but my rule, my man.
Tyree Cleveland to Charleston Rambo.
They're all bad. It doesn't matter how many you could have 80 receivers. If you only have one very good, doesn't matter. That's not depth. That's
no, but I mean, I guess I didn't even give Deon Cain much of a chance to make the team. So I
knew. I didn't at first, but it's funny you mention all these names. Okay, so we know the first four. Okay, AJ Brown, Smith, Zacchaeus, and Watkins are definitely on the team. But the fifth role, Greg Ward is a backup slot. He's probably not going to make it. He would have to have like this training camp of his life because this. And I know I get the slot roles open, but you kind of know who he is. Now he's been there since 17. Covey, of course, who's right now as their punt returner. You'd love him to compete for Thomas' slot. You mentioned Tyree Cleveland, who's got size. He's been in the league. Wasn't he drafted by Denver? Am I wrong about that?
Yes. Tyree Cleveland was drafted by Denver.
Right. Another University of Florida guy. Joe Nada. who's a guy I think because he's got size. Now we got to look into this to see if he can play specials because that'll help him. If he can, it'll be harder.
True.
You mentioned Deion Kane, Charleston Rambo,
Hazelwood. Don't forget about him from
and
Arkansas.
Hayden Hasselwood
Right?
again, but they're all either undrafted free agents or guys who've done nothing in the National Football League, so they don't really have a good five. Now, Kane is the guy who Sirianni knows intimately because he was with him in Indy. He had I remember the Colts were so heartbroken. He was dominant in OTAs and as a rookie, and then he tore his ACL not too long later. It was maybe, I don't know, it was at the end of OTAs or early in training camp, and he was never the same. Bounced around, but give the kid credit, and I applaud Nick for giving him a shot. I know he knows the guy. I get it. It's one of his guys, but you know what? He's got good size. I was saying this in the chat with our Patreon people on Wednesday night. He's not that physically strong like Zacchaeus, but they need that guy who's got size for that fifth role, and he's got experience. It's wide open, and I also wouldn't because they don't know who the five's going to be, and if it doesn't look good, it wouldn't surprise me because they worked out N'Keal Harry, who's not very good, former first-round pick, but he's big. Wouldn't surprise me at all if they sign another guy. Again, depth has nothing to do with how many guys you have. It's how many guys you feel good about. You could have 7 guys on a roster in training camp. If these guys are all good, you're good. You don't need to bring anyone else in. But the problem is because of, and I know you've talked about this a bunch with veterans. Sometimes you want to have a veteran day, right? So some other guys have to play. And also for joint practices, going to get hot. And then you've got 3 preseason games. So you have to have just bodies. You need camp bodies. But I want to see Joe Nada when I go to practice tomorrow. That'll be my first day. And I should be there also on Sunday. That's the guy. I've talked to some receivers coaches who's got good body control. There's definitely something in his body. He's a big dude, but if he can't play on specials, it's hard to keep an undrafted free agent that doesn't play on specials, but we'll find out if he does.
Interestingly, I picked Joseph Nada in the series that Andrew DeCecco and I did for InsideTheBirds.com, our preview series. Our final category was the lighthearted selection was who's going to be Mr. All Novacare, All Novacare MVP. And I picked Joseph Nada to get that. So you just kept the hype train going right there for me. That's great.
Well,
That's
remember
awesome.
when we did our initial Too Early 53 back in I don't know, May or something?
Yeah, which are the 5? No, yeah, I remember that.
And I put Nada on there just because I had some intel on him. And teams like the Chargers or the Kings, they love big receivers. No matter who their GM is, they seem to like big receivers. If you could find now again, another point is we need to see if he can block because that role that Pascal had, I know he didn't catch the ball very much, but Sirianni likes that enforcer role. Now, if Nada's real strong, that'll also help him. But again, let's move on in a second here. Whether it's Rambo, Hasselwood, the aforementioned Nada, or Cleveland, if you don't play specials, the chance you make it are slim to none. You can't. They always tell you the more you can do, and coaches will tell you if the guy can't play specials, he's a bottom end roster guy. He's probably not going to make it.
Right. So we'll see. Obviously, a lot to parse through there. I didn't think until talking to you now that Deion Kane really should be considered, but he did have a very good camp last year, and then even though it didn't happen with the Eagles, he wound up going to USFL, doing well there. So I guess that I can see a pathway now, whereas I didn't before. So that was good intel right there. Yeah. Let's talk about some injuries because I think we were among the first, or maybe still the first and only, right, to talk about Avonte Maddox at the end of last year, not just having a toe injury, but that it was going to require a procedure, which he had. Now he made it back for the Super Bowl, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that was very impressive.
You had a great note, right? I don't know, a week or two before the Super Bowl. I think you said he's probably going to have surgery. He's going to tough it out. I don't know if he wore an insert on his shoe, but based on the intel we had, we're hearing he's just going to. He may have shot it the toe up. I don't know, but give this guy credit to play through a bad injury. He did enough to show them because what had happened was. I think it was the practice in between the Super Bowl, the in-between week, whatever they did. He showed them that he could run because if you can't run, you can't play. He was able to run. I don't know if I don't know if they shot it up. Did he take pain meds? Whatever the heck may be. Give this guy credit. And you detailed it correctly, man. He wound up having surgery and he and Barnett did not they were rehabbing. They didn't practice in OTAs and both got cleared. That was really good news on Wednesday. They were able to practice a bit.
Yeah, no, I believe Maddox is going to be kind of in and out, and we'll see how much he can do. Are you still surprised that the toe is limiting him for for now? I mean, all
Uh,
these months later.
well, let's say he had it sometime in February, right? March, April, May, June. I mean, it could
Like
be
a
a 3 to 4 month injury. I don't know.
yeah.
We don't see things. We don't know what exactly. If he tore ligaments, yeah, that could be 4 months.
Hmm.
Yeah, so we don't
Yeah.
know exactly what happened, but the good thing is he wasn't on PUP, and teams do this sometimes, even if a guy's going to be limited, because what happens is, as long as in the ramp up here, like you, because they know through their own information, because he's their player, they get to see him running, they could see what he's able to do, and then sometimes what happens is they ease up. The guys are coming off surgeries. They try to ease these guys in, depending on what kind of surgery it is, particularly if it's a foot or a toe.
Hmm.
You may want to limit him a little bit. But the good news also is Derek Barnett, and you talked about this on our Monday show. I think we talked about, because people want to know, well, why do they bring Barnett back? Because if you think about this, and in fact this happened on Wednesday's practice, because Reddick didn't play. Now they look at these guys as edge rushers, particularly. And I know Barnett's not a great edge rusher, but he's a good run defender. But the thing is, with one of the pass rushers gone, and if they're going to line up on a 4-3, that's Barnett with his hand down. He also has played standing up before. But the bottom line is they're down a pass rusher. And look, if BG can't practice a day, and let's say it's a joint practice, you need bodies out there. The Eagles are very light at defensive end, and this is a guy that I know he's not a very good pass rusher, and you could question whether he should have come back. But we talked about this in the spring. People were asking us, and we said, look, he's going to be back. He's got a low value deal. They're going to take him to training camp, see how he does, and hey, he wasn't on PUP. That's a good thing, and they're going to need him.
Yeah, yeah, they will. And I do feel like this camp, you're gonna get a good look. Who knows? I don't know what their chances are of making the team, but I do think because of Brandon Graham's age, because of Josh Sweat, they always want to keep preserved. Because of what you're saying about Derek Barnett, obviously coming off the ACL, I think you're probably going to get a decent amount of reps and a good amount of looks at guys like Patrick Johnson, at guys like Teron Jackson, at guys like Kyron Johnson.
That's
Some of
the
these
guy.
late round guys who play the edge, because they're young, and the Eagles really need to find out what they have in these guys for depth.
That's the guy, Kyron Johnson. Greg Cosell told us he really liked his tape. Yes, he's a smaller guy. Great Senior Bowl week. That got him drafted, I think. Or, yeah, when he was a 6th round. But it wasn't just Andy Weidel saying it before he left the Eagles. He said it last year. They really liked his practice tape for the Senior Bowl. He's so fast. It's like Andy Reid used to say, and Jim Johnson, they love to throw speed at offenses.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm interested to see. This is a guy that we've rarely mentioned him last year, because he's relegated to special teams if he dressed. And yeah, I mean, remember who did they cut? Well, they cut Teron Jackson. They brought him back.
Yep.
So there's an opportunity here. You never know. Because the thing what we don't know with Desai is, okay, he's running Fangio. He's going to run mostly, if not all of it. But again, guys situationally may think differently. And he doesn't know Kyron Johnson. I know one of the coaches on the staff knows him, because the guy was at Kansas, I think. But
yeah, the linebackers coach.
Is it Elliott? Is that the guy's
Yes.
name? Okay.
Him and Davion Taylor.
Hey, Dave, yeah, right. That's right. Davion Taylor's on the team. But getting back to Kyron Johnson, you can't teach speed. And this guy, he's got something that is hard to teach, because if you got speed, you're halfway there. You need technique, and you need to play within structure and discipline. But he's a guy that I'm curious to see. And obviously, Janoris Robinson, another guy, as we go through the next couple of weeks, because he's got length and explosiveness.
Good one. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see, because the new Viking staff, I was told, did not want him, but I don't know what they didn't like about him. It was real quick for him. They were not happy with him.
Yeah. And by the way, going back to Kyron Johnson, I believe in OTAs this year, they took a few looks at him as an off-ball linebacker too. So a chance to yeah, I think they did. I'm pretty sure. I'll double check on that, which would make sense, because he is short. I mean, he's kind of short to be an edge defender, but not to be an off-ball linebacker. And he's got great speed, like you said. So maybe there's something they can find there, especially as they kind of look at that linebacker picture. So that's really the injury situation. Of course, Hassan Reddick didn't practice first day because of a groin. They didn't say what happened there. Maybe it
Day to
happened at
day.
the
Yeah.
conditioning test.
Yeah.
Who knows? He's day to day. Yeah,
Yeah.
nothing to worry about, I don't think.
Nothing. That's what I've heard. It's just a day to day thing, but you don't want these things to linger. And the heat, man, the heat is going to get worse on Friday.
Oof.
Now, all their practices, yeah, this is probably the only time we're going to talk about it because they practice at 10 a.m. every day,
Yeah.
except, and I think Kevin Stefanski wanted this. I'm pretty certain. They practice in the afternoon. Most teams practice in the morning. I guess because he wants it hot. But when the Browns come in here, they're practicing 2 p.m. at in mid-August. You're practicing 2 p.m. That's what the Browns do. So that's what they wanted.
That's interesting. It's funny because games for most people start at 1:00.
Yeah,
you would think Chip Kelly was big on that. He wanted to practice at the same time
right?
most games, but you can make
that.
the argument that the Eagles are playing very few 1:00 games this year.
I know
so
they not. In fact,
it doesn't matter.
Like, aren't they?
Three.
Don't they have only like 4 or something?
Yeah, it's a really low number. So games are all over the map now. So all right, we'll talk about some observations in a second. First, it's Ocean Casino's 5th birthday this summer. They can't wait to celebrate with you. So join Ocean for exciting promotions and sweepstakes. Headline Entertainment, the best day life and nightlife lineup in AC, the debut of the birthday bar, exclusive local collabs and partnerships, commemorative 5th birthday merchandise, and so much more. Don't miss stunning fireworks and unique events all summer long. Plus, Ocean Rewards members will enjoy over $5 million in gifts and prizes. So be sure to sign up for an Ocean Rewards card to get in on the fun next time you visit. All right, let's also pause and hear for a word from some of our great sponsors. All right. I don't think there was any surprise that the first practice, Adam, was like maybe about an hour. Like you could say it was a little over an hour. Depends on exactly when they got lathered up and how long warm-ups take. But that was like
right.
last year. We were shocked last year, but now we know the deal. Now we know the deal. First day, just an hour.
Yeah. Now I was talking to some coaches around the NFL. Apparently, yeah. One of the teams did an hour and a half. One team did an hour and 20, and the Eagles did between. Yeah, you nailed it. It's between 60 and 70 minutes, depending on what you call warm-ups.
Mm-hmm.
So, but again, it was short, and it should be. Now, I will tell you though, I'm sure you remember this when Andy Reid was here. Like that first day. No, well, actually, coming out of the 11 CBA, you definitely couldn't hit on the first day. But they would hit early in camp. That was like a ritual for me for many years. I would go to the first day they would hit. Now, back when Andy was here, they wouldn't hit. They would have maybe 2 hitting periods of practice in a practice, but it wouldn't be like for 20 minutes. It might be 3 or 5 minutes. But hey, pads are popping. You'd love that.
Yeah, well, remember back then though, there was the first 3 days were just rookies, and then the last day of rookies is the day the veterans would get there. Then the next day was the conditioning test. Then they would have one ramp up practice, and then that Monday, right? It was either that Sunday or Monday was when the hitting was started. Like you said, only be 2 practices, but it was the most anticipated day of all of training camp.
Exactly, 100%. That's I would always call my training camp tour that the kickoff of Eagles hitting. And you tell me, did Chip Kelly hit it all? Did they hit? I don't remember.
No, barely. Chip wasn't into a whole lot of contact either.
Yeah, and Doug. Wait, did Doug?
You know what? I think Doug, we all expected him to, but he dialed it back once he became Eagles coach.
Okay. Because
Howie and Jeffrey were still into what Chip did from a sports science standpoint.
Sure.
And they maintained a lot of that, and they wanted to hit less.
Got you. Okay. So our intel from our people. So basically, yeah, it was a sloppy practice. Timing was it's like this. I've been to so many first practices for teams. I really don't like going to them, but sometimes that's the only time I get to see teams, and I can just tell you of what we were told. It was typical first practice. Timing was off. There were some good plays on offense. Hurts was up and down, but he had some really good throws. Goddard was dominant. He's not going to be heavily targeted every week because you have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. That's just the way it is. But if he was on a team where there was only one great receiver and him, you're talking about 80 to 90. If he played 17 games, he would have 80 to 90 receptions. It's just unfortunately, they've got 2 great receivers. So he's basically uncoverable. And then these are just the notes that we got. Mariota struggled. Timing was off. Wasn't comfortable. This is just me here, but I think part of it is because they only had 6 practices in their offseason. He's not getting, he doesn't know these players very well.
Right.
I mean, he knows Zacchaeus because they were together with the Falcons, but he's a backup receiver, though it could be their 3. And obviously Mariota's back is their number 2, so he'd work with him. But if you just look overall from what we understand, he was just off a little bit. So I know people were killing you on our
I don't think I think they were actually sort of joking along with me. Like,
well, because
okay,
you were killing them, yeah. They thought you were on our which board is that? The
YouTube one.
YouTube, yeah. Because you were telling the truth. He struggled badly last season, and I'm being nice about it.
Yeah.
I mean, they're paying him $5 million. Well, $5 million is a fair price for a very experienced backup quarterback, but it's kind of like one of these situations. I do really wonder if the Eagles had any competition for him because he was so bad this season. I don't know. Anyway,
yeah.
We'll see.
No, that's a good question. Interestingly, he one of his interceptions was picked off by Christian Ellis, and that was was like a repeat of what happened in OTAs that I was at. So
I know Mariota threw it to, Mariota did in OTAs, and we'll get to defense in a minute. Here's a good note. I've learned my lesson. Be very careful of making any judgments at all. Not even one. You just go by it. It's everything we get is intel. It's less about observations. It's about, okay, here's what we saw and here's what we think it means. That's the intel. And here's what their process was. The one thing was noticeable. I get today was a lot of passing because it was more 7-on-7 or situational stuff, or your Wednesday's practice. But the running backs were catching the football. Now, see, it's only one practice, and we need at least a week to see if it's actually real. But
that's also the nature of the early days of training camp because it's a passing camp. So
not only that, you can't be, because they're in the ramp up acclimation period. The first 4 days you can't hit. You can get somewhat physical. Right. There's certain restrictions. So you're right. It was more passing on Wednesday. So, but it just was kind of noticeable the way it's explained to me. Like you definitely could notice it. That it wasn't just OTAs are over and now they're in training camp. So now, Swift caught some balls. Gainwell caught some balls. Now, we don't know what the play call was. We don't know if it's a check down. We know Hurts doesn't like checking the ball down. He either runs or throws it. He's an aggressive thrower. We just don't know. But that's the one thing as training camp goes by here, of next couple of weeks. I'm very interested to see what happens. Will he check it down? And also, how much of it is it designed to the backs? Because they rarely, with these coaches, rarely design passes to the backs.
Right. Well, and we'll see if maybe Brian Johnson has any influence on that, or if they just naturally feel like they need to add that to the offense more to avoid from being stale, to uncover something new. And then, of course, you actually have running backs who can catch the ball.
That's it. Why Travis Swift? I mean, why would you trade for him? Now, I get it. They got to count for that. I get it's only a 2024 fifth, but that's or fourth. It was a 2025 fourth. But you traded for the guy. He's dynamic in the pass game. Why trade for him? He's not going to get the ball in the pass game. But hey,
right. There you go. Not surprised, by the way, when Nick Sirianni mentioned and it was seen at the training camp practice that you're going to have different guys rotating in and out. This is not like, trying to battle for right guard, which we'll talk about in a second, where a guy's going to get most of the reps one day, then maybe somebody different. You got so many running backs of so many different skills, and you're going to want to see them all with the first team, with the second team at different times. So, I don't think it's not going to be like Monday is Rashad Penny with the first team day, and Tuesday or Wednesday, I guess, is going to be DeAndre Swift with the first team day. Nick said you're going to see them just in and out because, listen, we've got a lot of guys. They're all good. He mentioned Trey Sermon, threw his name in there, and you got to see everybody does something different. You got to see pass protection. You got to see blitz pickup. You got to see catching the ball. So you're going to see that all camp, I would imagine.
The term though, on what you're talking about. So coaches call it, what's the term I was given? Possible situational rotation. Okay, what does that mean? So you have your primary first and second down back. If it goes like I know you may not agree, but the way that I see this going is Penny and Swift are your primary first and second down backs. We know Penny is not going to be on third down. He's just not.
Right.
Now, the game could take a little bit of that, but your primary most weeks, if it goes the way I think it'll go, will be Penny and Swift. Now, third down is not hurry up. It's different. It's situational. Okay, your third down guys will be Swift and Gainwell most of the time. Okay, your 2-minute and 4-minute offense. It could be both, or it could be Gainwell's good at that. Like that's where he really helped himself late last season. That they're going to have to learn in camp. They're going to, because you got to have juice in that, because you get what it really means. You got to go fast. Like Swift is shifty. He's smooth, but he doesn't have Gainwell's juice. So that they're going to have to learn. But it's really, it could be a situational rotation. Just depends on down distance. What's the score? What's the situation? And then I don't know what Boston's. I know you've called it a grab bag. I agree with you. I have no idea what I know he's their highest paid running back, but I don't know what they're going to do with this guy.
Can your highest paid running back has there ever been a situation where the highest paid running back played the entire year for a team and had the fewest amount of touches?
I mean, other than kickoff, other than kickoff returns where he I don't want to say shocked the world, but he was actually pretty solid.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, he's a fine back. He does a good job when they put him in there. But it was like spin the wheel. Okay, is it this week? Other than the Giants, that Boston will play. Nope, he'll dress, but he won't play. He'll only kick off return. I don't know. I have no feel for it. But to me, Penny, when he puts that foot in the ground and he's decisive, they got nobody like him on the roster. I know Sermon's a talented back, a third rounder, but he's not Penny. Penny's the most gifted guy as a runner on this team by far. Like he's got elite gifts. That's why he was a first rounder. We know about the crazy injury history, but you look at those final 6 games of 2021 were ridiculous. So
averaging over 6 yards per carry for his career is pretty good. You're not going to find too many people that do that.
I know, but that and those of us who play fantasy, he carried us to championships. He sure as heck helped me, and I didn't even want him. I tried not to pick him up, but he was like the only guy on the waiver wire. Shame on me for saying I'm just going to cut him in 2 weeks. I don't expect anything, and I'm like, oh my goodness, wow.
Who knew? Who knew? Let's talk about the right guard situation, because Cam Jurgens was the first to start. And then, listen, we said this guy, you may not handicap it as he would be the favorite to win the job, but I think it makes sense for a lot of reasons that he's the first guy up at right guard. First of all, this is his second year. He's a second-round pick. Tyler Steen's a third, Jack Driscoll's a fourth. And this kid had played right guard a little bit last year in OTAs and camp until Jason Kelce had the shoulder or the elbow surgery, and then they had to move Cam to center. So we're obviously going to see all three of them at times. But I made this point on the last podcast too. The heat's coming up. There's practices. I don't know how much Jason Kelce is going to practice all training camp long. So there's going to be a lot of times where Jurgens going to have to move to center, first team center, to play there. And that's why it makes sense to get him as much right guard reps now before you start doing that.
I guess, yeah. But I think the big thing is we talked about on Monday's show and also last week, what we had heard was Jurgens is ahead of Steen on technique and footwork.
Right, being year 2 especially.
Yeah. But they remember now to Jurgens, this is like a new language for him, learning how to play offensive line. It was only his third year on the playing. You remember he's a former tight end, and then he became an offensive lineman. His final 2 years. Final
2 years. So I mean, he has played it now for 3 straight years. I mean, I
understand, but it's and having to learn how to play guard, which he never played before, but the technique, he learned it last year. Coaches will tell you if you don't have the technique down, you don't play. There's a certain first step. And with Steen, this is new to him. He's never played inside before. So they want Steen to be the starter because they drafted him to be the long-term starter. There's no question about that at right guard. But he's got to learn it. And Brett Toth, who was lined up since he was added to the Eagles roster some years ago, he's lined up in practice at right tackle, left tackle, and guard. He lined up on Wednesday. He got some snaps at guard. Steen obviously did. And this is one, again, it was a 1-hour practice. We're not making any definitive statements, but we're going to watch this thing. And obviously it's a big deal. This is, as we talked about on Monday's show, the worst thing you could do is whoever starts at right guard, the guy struggles and you don't want to have slide protection because, yes, it covers up that right guard spot with help, but it makes you vulnerable on where you're leaving some holes there. So you don't want that. And this is what these practices are going to be like. Also, even though the walkthroughs, sometimes we make fun of it, it's important. Walkthroughs, you still have to go through footwork and technique. So We'll see how this works out. We'll have our eye on this one, obviously.
Yeah, it's going to be. I mean, we talked about this. This will be one of the highlights of camp to watch and see how these guys progress and see who gets the nod there. Dennis Kelly, was Dennis Kelly at left tackle for the first? I guess they really do need somebody who's played some left tackle, and Dennis is, other than Toth, right? Brett Toth has played mostly right tackle. I think he had to play left tackle on a pinch once, if I'm not mistaken. I know he had to get into a game, but either way,
I think that I'd have to look it up. I think when he tore his ACL, he actually started left tackle. I'm not 100% positive.
It was against the Cowboys, was it not? He came in to play left tackle.
Yes, and then they had Jack Anderson.
That's a blast from the past. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why I remember this stuff.
Currently with the New York Giants, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. But getting back to this situation, yes. So as we noted on Monday, that Kelly, personnel people around the league see him as a left who could play right. Yes, he played guard many years ago, but he's really most comfortable at left. Ideally, because he's a power blocker, you'd rather him be at right tackle, but he can do both. And as we said before they signed Kelly, we said, listen, they have to add a veteran offensive tackle. They have to. They don't have much of a choice,
right? Because
they have one guy, is Jack Driscoll, who's their top backup. But they don't have a seventh guy. And now I know Kelly's 33 and a half years old. We talked to someone who would know with over the years from the Titans who loves Dennis Kelly as a guy. Said he's so tough. He played through a bunch of injuries. He's a tough guy. But he's like he just questions how long he's going to last, and we'll have to see. Look, it's crazy. He's back 7 years later, and I was joking with someone. Wait, did he sign a 1-year ceremonial contract? No, he's actually here to compete for a job. Okay,
that would be funny if he. I'm signing to retire as an Eagle. Well why?
Sunday night, I think he did. He changed his avatar to Eagles, but he didn't say anything. He just changed it. And then I'd heard he passed his physical Monday, and this is actually because that was the thing. I was not worried, but I was like, okay, is he going to pass his physical? Because based on the intel we had, I'm like, geez, is this guy, is he built by? Is he like the Bionic Man? For those of you over 50, remember, $6 million man. Like, is he? Do they have to rebuild him? Like, what's going on with this guy? But yeah, I guess he's fine and good. But we'll see if he lasts in training camp.
Do you think you hear that noise when Dennis Kelly drops back into a that you used to hear when you watch the $6 million?
You got it. You don't have to remember. Yeah, with Lee Majors, who was drafted by the Rams. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to transition to some defensive observations. First, we're going to remind everybody to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHL Sports Nation. And let's pause to hear from our great friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you stop into Sky Motor Cars in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Jeff sent you. You will get a great deal. All right. So what kind of feedback did you get on just the overall defensive performance? Because it felt like you heard like kind of lackadaisical, just in general. The first day of practice is always, you can have your penalties. I know Nick Sirianni got I think it was on the offense for a pre-snap penalty, but defense is usually ahead of offense for the first few days of camp. But I don't know if this Eagles defense is prepared to be ahead that much because they're new themselves,
The word I got was swimming. Because they've got a minimum of 5 new starters.
Yeah.
They got a lot of changes, and it just was not crisp. It's typical. I can't remember the last time I went to a training camp, going back to my first one in '99, where the first practice was good. There's always some kind of issue, and the coaches get on their guys, and the reporters saw it, and the reporters put it out there. I guess Sirianni went off, and he does. I mean, he's a yeller. That's fine. It works for him. And by the way, the guys respond. That's the big thing. He doesn't do it to show off. He just does it because he's pissed. And I saw it when he went after Gainwell against the Browns in the Browns joint practices. You can't have mental errors, man. That there's nothing that pisses coaches off. Like physical errors, okay, you slip, you fall, but mental errors are the worst, and it drives coaches crazy because it kills a play. And the timing was off. It was just a sloppy practice, and from what we were told. And let's work back to front, because I think this is interesting. This safety position, we said all offseason it's going to be Blankenship Edmonds to start off. It was what we expected. There was the funny thing was like nothing surprising, to use your term. Everything was according to Hoyle. Just it's like, you file the Eagles, you can probably guess what was going to happen. Blankenship is so far ahead of Sidney Brown, it's obvious. Brown's having to learn how to play safety, playing back and not playing in the box anymore.
Right.
So,
and in an entirely different scheme.
Totally different. Right, exactly. So you got Blankenship and Edmonds were with the ones. Sidney Brown, the problem is, so Evans and Kevon Wallace went in with the twos, but it's not like Brown rotated. And so the bottom line is he's in a learning phase. I'm not making any definitive statements. I know people are saying there's no way Sidney Brown will start week 1. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I get it.
Knows?
He's got to learn everything. He's really smart. That really helps. Very coachable, but he's got the 1-2 to be great. It's just going to take him some time. So, okay. It's gone to expected like we thought, but I want to see Justin Evans, who we know had that situation. He was with teams, but didn't play a snap of football for 3 years. Well, he was healthy, played some nickel last season. Let's see what he can do. They're not very good at safety. Let's call it like it is, where they were very good last season. This is a big downgrade. Let's see what Justin Evans can do.
100%. He's one of the, if you were to give me like 5 guys I'm really kind of intrigued about at camp, it would be him, because he's a former 2nd-round pick and he tested really well. I mean, if I don't want to say take the injuries away, because that would be like saying take the injuries away from Rashad Penny and you've got Edgerrin James. I don't know, like,
Right. That's true. No, you can.
They're really a part of it. But if he's healthy and he's not worn and torn, then you might have something interesting there, because this is, and we had a great conversation with one of our loyal listeners, Carl, right, during our great Ask ITB live stream for our Patreon members. And, Carl felt that maybe we're not seeing Reed Blankenship be better than what he can be, that Reed can really come into his own. And the point we were making was that safety is one of those positions where, unlike linebacker, where you don't have to be the best athlete, but if you're instinctive and you're smart, you can compensate like TJ Edwards did, like London Fletcher did for so many years. Safety is a harder position to really flourish at if you're not a great athlete. I mean, you got to run, you got to do a whole lot of running and covering.
Well, here's the thing.
You can play, you don't have to be the greatest athlete. You can still play. I'm just saying, if you really want to flourish, and with Reed is, you've talked about it a bunch of times. I mean, he's a smart kid, picks up a lot, but obviously a little bit of a step slow and not the fastest, most fleet of foot guy in the world.
Okay, so here's the book from our personal source. It was pretty darn good. This guy said, you love the intelligence. You go back to that interception that he had against Rodgers. His first read is just about always right, which is like, that's 50% of the battle. That means you could process pretty well. And he's got better than you think ball skills, but the problem is you obviously you don't see it much in practice, but you saw from what school in Kentucky did he go to? He went to where Byard went. What's
it was? I thought it was Middle Tennessee State.
MTSU, yeah, MTSU. So, but the problem is his foot quickness is not there. He's a step slow, as you mentioned, and you're always going to know that if it's someone who could run, if it's a tight end who can run, tight end doesn't have to be 6'5", could be 6'3". But if the guy could run, you can't match him up. You probably won't have him on the field, and that's not a starting safety.
Right.
So you're already in the hole already, and that's a problem. Now, Edmonds he's been asked to cover. He's we were told pretty strongly when they signed him, our intel on him was he's not super instinctive. We know he could run. He's a great kid, but you're always going to look to replace him down the line. That's why he signed a series of 1-year deals, and it's why he signed an undervalued deal with the Eagles. You love the kid. Evans is by the way, Evans is real instinctive in coverage. He's just, as you mentioned, you don't know if you trust him to be on the field a lot because of the injury history. You gotta. It's one of the rare times when you look at a player and coaches try not to put that in the back of their mind, but like, can we trust him? Because it's such bad luck with injuries, but he's so gifted. Cosell talked about it. Greg loved his tape. He was a 2nd rounder. Greg thought I remember talking to Greg in that 17 draft. It was one of his favorite, I think it was 17, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
One of his favorite plays for that draft. And the tape was so good, but he's been a train wreck with injuries. And that's the thing. Now he's also an undervalued deal, but rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got Kevon Wallace and Brown. Wallace, we know, is a force safety at best, special teamer. Hey, they didn't cut him. He's still there. He's on the final of his rookie deal, so he's got a lot to prove, but it's just not a good position. It's one of the worst positions on the football team. Yeah, jobs are wide open. It'll be a good competition, but the talent level is just not good enough.
Yeah, no, it's not. And, we have to see how that shakes out. Hopefully there's a surprise there and a guy like Justin Evans is healthy and productive and the athleticism shines through, but, we will see with that. And then you sort of have a similar situation as we move to linebacker. And it's kind of funny because Christian Ellis is out there and he makes a nice play, but Howie Roseman was asked in the press conference, he was specifically asked, outside of Nakobe Dean and Nick Morrow, do you have guys you're confident there? And Howie doesn't even name a name. He doesn't say Christian Ellis. He doesn't say the kid from Temple, Sean Bradley. He doesn't mention Ben Van Sumeren, right? And he basically says, I'll do whatever I need to do to improve the team. I'm willing to do, which,
there's no question.
which is like a signal that, he's got his eyes elsewhere if need be.
They worked out.
I know who you're going to say. The guy from the Bears, right? Yeah, he has a hyphenated last name, I think.
Oh, no, that guy's a safety, DeAndre Houston Carson.
Oh, that's right. He is a safety.
I think they might have worked him out, but no, they worked also some off the ball linebackers. That's the thing. Within a week or two, if it doesn't look right, if we had a rank, what are the positions they'll sign? Because the teams typically work out a lot of players early in camp because what happens is they tape them. It's more for the season. More often than not, it's for the season because they want this practice tape. I mean, this workout tape because you tape them. They're in your building. You can tape it, and they refer to it, particularly when the guy's coming off an injury. But they have this workout tape, and if someone gets hurt or they're struggling, and if the safety position looks bad in 2 weeks, they could sign somebody, or even 10 days. Who knows?
Sure.
And linebacker, think about this now. Think about this. If either Morrow or Dean gets hurt, you've heard our term before, folks. What's the answer? We've used that term. This is a coach's term. What's our answer if a guy gets hurt? You tell me who's starting at inside linebacker when one of these guys gets hurt.
You maybe.
That's the point. Exactly. You can't. It's not an answer for a team that's made the Super Bowl. It's not good enough. You brought this up 2 months ago. You were on the record on the show saying you didn't. No one told you this, but you said logically you looked at their depth. It was after the draft. Van Sumeren, Bradley, and Davion Taylor.
Yeah.
You can't go into the season with this. You need someone who's played before.
Yeah, 100%. I would be. I think when we were doing our 53-man projection is when we did it because I kept thinking like, who makes this team after the first three? And it's
I was wrong because
number three is even that great.
When you went over, I'm like, I don't know, Van Sumeren, but like, I'm thinking now, what am I talking about? The guy's a rookie. I know why I got lost on it because they gave him a nice guarantee, but that doesn't mean he's going to play.
No.
In fact, I missed on that one. But
the book on him too is that he's got great athletic traits, but his instincts need refinement. I mean, he's a project. Yeah, misses tackles. Yeah. Like you can't just stick him in there and be like, that's our guy.
Yeah.
Right.
And we know Davion Taylor was severely overdrafted. That was a Jim Schwartz. I need a linebacker, and that draft 4 years ago, man. Why the hell they didn't go see? If they would have just stuck to their board, they never would have drafted him. Or if actually, I'm sorry, no, they would have because he would have been there in the 6th round. But,
they would have just drafted him where they should have.
That's honestly, just think over now. Now I say that they drafted Hurts way over.
I know I was going to throw that back at you.
I know, but. When Howie's missed, like Rager, their draft number on him, where they had him on their board, was lower, much lower. It wasn't like 3rd round, but it was lower than 20 wherever they picked him because they overdrafted the speed. And that's the thing. Every GM you talk to, they'll tell you the same thing. When I draft for need, it bites you in the ass. You just can't do that.
Definitely. So another position that is going to be under our microscope for quite a while in these coming weeks. Defensive line, that one you feel obviously a lot more secure with. Brandon Graham kind of filling in there with Hassan Reddick out. They're probably not going to overwork Brandon Graham either. So you're probably going to get a good look at Nolan Smith. I know he had some second team run. I would imagine that's going to be pretty consistent. You'll probably see him on the first team at times. especially if Hassan Reddick's going to be out a little bit day to day, because they're just not going to want to give too much of a workload to a lot of these older edge rushers, whether it's Barnett, whether it's Hassan Reddick, who's not old, but you don't want him getting hurt or overworked.
Oh, he's too important, right? Exactly.
Yeah, Brandon Graham. So you're going to get a good look at this youth. And by interesting, obviously, Milton Williams took the I think the first set of first team reps at defensive tackle with Davis and Cox instead of Jalen Carter.
Yep.
But that's, they always make the rookies earn their stripes. That's
sure. So here's what we have, and this is a great. I love this. This is one of my favorite scouting terms. I think we've maybe mentioned it once in the 6 years we've done the show. This is year 6.
Mm-hmm.
So one person said you could feel Smith's speed when you watch a player. Like, okay, you and I saw Tyreek Hill, right, in Miami last summer. My mouth dry. I also saw him at Tampa Bay run Carlton Davis inside out.
And he's a good corner.
I know. And we saw who did he run? Who did
Slay? He ran Slay inside out. Early.
Yeah, I thought
he had Slay limping off the field.
It was like, Geoff and I love football. It was like breathtaking. Like I was at Terrell Owens' first practice in 2004.
Yeah,
Lehigh with 10,000 people. That was pretty special. But watching special football players like Antonio Brown, I watched very early in his career when he's with the Steelers, and that was pretty special. But one person said to me, you could feel Smith's speed, and the guys called it unusual for that position. Like Reddick has great, outstanding straight line speed, no doubt. And you've seen his second reaction sacks where he goes past the quarterback, then comes back, and he strips the guy. It's incredible. But this dude's speed, this is why I think clubs they let him drop to late in the first round because he's smaller. So what? Like, why would you pass on a guy who's got this kind of talent? So he's not Micah Parsons, 6'3" and 250. So what? We'll see. We'll see if we're right here. But this kid's got real ability. And when someone tells me who I really respect, hey, you can feel this kid's speed. It's unusual. And the movement is really, really good. And you saw it. You outlined for us very well what you saw in OTAs. I know it was OTAs, but you know what? And the kid is super special, elite, smart, and he's really good. I get he's small, but I cannot wait to see how Desai uses him. That's the key. If he knows what he's doing, so far so good. I want to see on game day if they could find a role for this guy.
I'm really, for him, I'll be really intrigued to see. And I know they're not hit, but when the pads come out and he's in full uniform,
sure.
Dawkins. Listen, I'm not calling Nolan Smith a shorts and shirts guy. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I do want to see if everything just translates the same way once you get the bigger equipment on and get going. So obviously he was a great player at Georgia, so he should be. Yeah. But it's some guys you can tell it's not going to be a deal for. Some guys you just want to see it with the shirts and the padding on just to make sure it's real. So
I get ideally because they will play 43. They played some 43 last year. It's not what you want on a 43 defensive end, but it's not like he can't do it. And who's to say he can't put more poundage on his frame? Like certain guys at 6'2", 235, 240. Hey, they can only get to 243, and that's the best you can do. Some guys can get up to 250, 255. Who knows?
Yeah. So. I mean, Reddick was a stand-up guy in a 4-3 last year whenever they were rushing the passer from that formation, and he seemed to do all right. So I would think he'd be okay.
He's pretty special. Yeah, he's pretty special. So, no, that was interesting. So I cannot wait to see him on Friday because I'm hoping they practice a little more. Now, it is going to be very hot. It's going to be, that day's going to go up to mid-90s, and it should be in the high 80s. And humid tomorrow for Friday's practice. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do. Hopefully they practice a little bit longer. None of these 47-minute practices, which they shot this year one,
Yeah. No, we'll see. And obviously Zach McPherson, just like in the OTAs, was in there in the slot when Avonte Maddox is not going to be in there. He's going to get a good shot. He's going to get a good look, and he'll probably get a decent amount of reps there this summer because that's where he really should be with Greedy Williams now as your top outside corner and getting a look there.
Yeah, Greedy's kind of lock unless he's just awful. He should be the 3. And then Josh Jobe, he has the lead on the other guys because they're new. But the guy that I will really want to see and we're gonna look into over the next week or so is Eli Ricks because this kid's really talented. He's long. There's a lot there. He's what you want in a corner. I get he wasn't drafted, so you always question why wasn't a guy drafted, but neither was Josh Jobe, neither was Garner or Mario Goodrich. They're all back. And the other, we don't have anything on this guy yet, but I'm looking forward to seeing Tristan McCullum and seeing how they line him up at safety. Because again, there's an opportunity there. Look, every camp, Blankenship, Corey Clement, there's always an opportunity for someone to come out of nowhere, particularly an undrafted free agent. And you may or may not be talking about him in OTAs, but particularly training camp, we go, hey, this guy's got to run with a second team. All of a sudden, he got a couple reps with the ones after 2 weeks. Wow, this is crazy. No one talked about this. Wow, this is let's see
right. That was Reed Blankenship last year.
Right?
Hey, hold on a second.
Yeah, and we didn't really talk about him much in OTAs, but he, we said, I think, like going to the second week of training camp, the only thing we're going to say definitive is he's making the team. Like he's got it made.
Yeah. Remember, Jaquaski Tart had left camp for a little bit.
That was part of it, right?
Yeah, that gave Reed a really good chance to get some reps and capitalize on that.
Tart, I don't think he ever played.
I don't think he did. No.
That was it. Boy, and he was so you're good at this. I love when you do this. Okay. Who was it was Anthony Harris, and then was there anyone before, like,
for what?
So it was Anthony Harris before that. And then they brought him back. Did they bring Harris back late last season?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, they did bring Anthony Harris back. And oddly enough, they activated him. No, they deactivated him, but they guaranteed it was something very strange. Okay. They did. But you're equating what has happened at safety with what used to happen at linebacker, where you would sign these guys to veterans to 1-year deals, and they would either retire or lose their job.
Corey Nelson.
Actually, it has been safety that Will Parks really didn't last more than a year.
Oh man, and he got towards hamstring. That was disappointing. But
not with he did tear with the Eagles. That's right. Yeah.
My favorite one, and I know you love this one because you brought up with Mike Gill. Donnell Ellerby gets a Super Bowl ring because they were really light at middle linebacker.
Just yank him off the street a couple weeks before the playoffs.
He was literally like 90% done. And that was cool. He, I'm pretty certain he won a Super Bowl in 2012 with the Ravens. But this happens. But that's a pretty good information intel there for day one. Nothing earth shattering. As using a term, it's according to Hoyle. But after a week is when we start digging in. Go, okay, this is happening. This guy's ahead of this guy. Or this guy's standing out.
Right.
And there's some of these low end guys. I'm bottom of the roster. I'm really interested to see about Ricks, McCullum, just because he's got height, weight, speed. His brothers with the Bucks. I know people want to know about Moro, Jomo. We're gonna wait a week, folks. Nobody does it like this. I think 1 year I counted. We talked about 57 players after 3 weeks because I went over my. I like to look back. What's that?
We did. We had them all.
Yeah, we talk about. There's certain players you're just not going to have anything on because if the guy didn't do anything, you're just not going to talk about him. But like Kennedy Brooks, we probably won't talk about unless he has like a series of great practices.
I can't even believe he's still on the team with all the running backs they have.
Or Brady Russell, as a tight end.
Yeah.
But look, we're going to get into the Grant Calcaterra Arnold battle over.
Sure. We'll get into some Tanner McKee, perhaps. We'll have some observations on him.
Yeah, him, your guy Charleston
Rambo.
Yeah, I was going to. There was a good nickname for Rambo, First Blood. Yeah.
Charleston First Blood. Nice, I like that.
Right. But Greg Not Hospital Award.
Yeah, Joseph not going to get cut. Joseph not to get cut.
Joseph Not Haloti Nada. Yeah, sure.
That's a good
Former
one.
Eagle.
Yes, definitely.
But anyway, that's it.
All right, well, that's good. We will have it all. A lot more observations next time we reconvene on Monday. That's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast and Eagles Intel. As always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds.